Hi, I'm Ayla Crane. For 10 years, I paid every bill while my sister-in-law lived in my house, for free. She called me just the help, said I smelled like bleach. And one day she shoved me and screamed, "Don't touch the baby, you're filthy!" That baby, my nephew. The child I raised when no one else would. Then she banned me from his life. Who does that? What kind of family lets you give everything, then turns you into nothing? I carried a small wrapped box into the backyard, heart pounding in my ears. The sun was warm, the scent of blooming jasmine floated in the air, and laughter rose in soft waves. I glanced at the folding chairs, the plastic tablecloths with pastel stripes, and Celine dressed in crisp white leaning against the house of our shared property. It struck me. This was supposed to be home, but it had never felt entirely mine. Earlier that afternoon, I'd slipped off my janitorial uniform, shaken off disinfectant smell, pulled on a modest blouse and jeans, and drove 5 minutes from the hospital complex where I work nights. I was sweaty, tired, but hopeful. It was Jackson's 5th birthday. Celine had insisted on a big party, and I promised him something handmade. A wooden puzzle painted with his name, built by me over weeks using scrap wood I collected and sanded in my garage. It was small, imperfect, but made with love. I crossed the yard, clutching the gift, and heard murmurs. A couple of kids squealed over balloons, adults spoke in half-laughs. Celine caught my eye. Her lips were tight. I smiled anyway, stepping forward. Jackson broke from a group, beaming when he saw me, and I crouched, arms open, but Celine intervened fast. She grabbed his hand, pulling him back, retreating like I carried contagion. My breath caught. Then came her words. "Don't touch the baby, you're filthy." Her voice, sharp as broken glass, sliced through the music and chatter. Every head turned. The laughter died. Conversations stuttered. My cheeks burned. I dropped the gift. Juice spilled from a red cup, running in rivulets toward the patio stones. My lips tingled. Shame, humiliation, weight I'd carried for years, compressed my chest. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came. I stood there, pulse hammering, while Celine smirked, satisfied with her projection. Jackson's eyes flicked between us. Lyle hovered nearby, shoulders tensioned, silent. I stumbled backward, camera phones raised, whispers trailing me. In that moment, I felt stripped, of dignity, of belonging. I turned and walked away, leaving the party among balloons and pastel paper plates. Night came later, bringing cold quiet and darkness. I made my way to the door I'd locked every morning, the one I believed no one would dare change. But tonight, the lock clicked differently. I tried the handle. It didn't budge. I jiggled the key. Nothing. A digital keypad glowed blue with numbers I didn't recognize. Someone had installed a new digital lock. No announcement. No conversation. I stood outside our house, the mortgage still in my name, the title still bearing my signature, but the threshold was barred. A neighbor peered through a curtain. Lyle's car sat in the driveway. No footsteps. No voices answered when I knocked. Just the silence of exclusion. The porch light flickered as I sat on the steps. I held my hands together so hard they trembled. Everything I had done for them, paying the bills, patching the roof leak, letting them stay temporarily because they were family, slid away in the dark. I thought I had built something strong. It turns out it was built on trust they never respected. The cicadas buzzed. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of 10 years compress into one moment. Loneliness, betrayal, fury, they rolled together. My throat pinched, but no tears came yet. I breathed instead. Thought about the nights I cleaned hospital hallways, the early mornings I fixed pipes on the roof, the money I set aside for when I might finally leave this house but not want to hurt them. I reflected. I thought, I should have spoken up sooner. I should have demanded respect when Celine first sneered at my work. But I loved Jackson like my own, and I wanted peace. I believed being silent was kindness. Now I knew silence was giving them power to erase me. Hours later, I slipped my phone out and saw the message waiting. "Don't make a scene. You know you're not wanted here anymore." My hands shook. I deleted it before reading further, but the hurt was a flare in my chest. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, my silhouette trembling. I whispered into the night, maybe I should have left years ago, but not like this. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out, curled up on a borrowed twin mattress, surrounded by the quiet hum of the garage's old mini-fridge and the scent of motor oil. The silence was loud, unforgiving. It wrapped around my chest and pressed into every breath. My friend Gloria had offered me this space months ago when she saw the tension building. "Just in case," she had said, handing me a spare key with that look only women who've been through it understand. And now, here I was, no suitcase, just my work tote and a zip-up hoodie I'd stuffed inside. The sun peeked through a tiny rectangular window near the ceiling, casting light over the stacked cardboard boxes and metal shelving. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, listening to my heart pound as my mind replayed Celine's voice. "Don't touch the baby, you're filthy." Her words looped in my head, louder than the sound of party laughter, louder than the silence from Lyle, and more cutting than any slap. Because they weren't just about dirt or clothes. She was talking about me, who I am, what I do, what I represent. I reached for my phone. Still nothing. No text. No missed calls. Not even a "sorry" from my brother. I refreshed the screen out of habit, knowing it wouldn't change anything. The absence was louder than any argument. Jackson didn't call either. Not that I blamed him. He's just a child, pulled between loyalty and what he's being told. But it still hurt, like a scrape you don't remember getting until you bump it again. I sat up, stretched my back, and let my feet find the cold concrete floor. The chill helped. It grounded me. I wrapped the hoodie tighter around my body and walked over to my tote. Among the receipts and charger cables, I found my old notebook, the one I used to track bills when I first bought the house. I flipped through its pages, seeing ink-stained numbers from years ago. Electric, water, mortgage, all in my name. And then, a flash of memory hit me like a gust of wind from a door suddenly flung open. 10 years ago, Mom had just gotten sick. Lyle had lost his job. Celine was newly pregnant. They had nowhere to go, and I, being the reliable one, the helper, opened my door. I remember her voice trembling as she held her stomach. "It's just until we figure things out." Lyle swore he'd be out in 6 months. I let them in. I gave up my privacy, my kitchen, my weekends. I gave up any shot at dating, because who wants to bring someone home to a house filled with another couple and a crying newborn? The first 6 months were fine. I cooked, I helped with midnight feedings, I bought diapers when their food stamps ran out. But by year 2, Celine started redecorating. She painted the walls without asking, changed curtains, bought a new rug using my Amazon account. And every time I raised a question, she'd say, "You said this was our home, too." Our home. The words stung now. I stood up, needing movement. I walked outside to the side yard where Gloria kept a small iron bistro table. The air was cool. The street was quiet. I opened my laptop, intent on backing up my files and scanning for anything I might need if this turned into a legal mess. While digging through old folders, I stumbled on a PDF. Title Transfer Form 2018. My chest tightened. I clicked it open. It looked like a property transfer form. At the bottom, it had my digital signature, my old one, before I started signing in cursive again. I remembered Lyle asking me to sign a refinancing document years ago to help lower the property taxes. He said it was just a formality. At the time, I didn't question him. I trusted him. He was my brother. But this form had Celine's email as the sender, her name on the application request, not Lyle's. I stared at the screen, heart racing. My fingers began trembling as I opened another folder labeled Ref Docs. More PDFs, more forms I never remembered reading. One in particular had a note in the margin. Request to remove secondary owner name for ease of inheritance. Secondary owner? That was me. I felt like vomiting. I called the county clerk's office, hands cold against my ear. I gave them the parcel number and waited as the woman on the other end typed. Her voice was friendly, but what she said made my knees weaken. "There was a proposed amendment to the deed back in 2018, ma'am," she said. It wasn't finalized because it wasn't properly notarized, something about the second signer not being present at the time. Second signer? Me. Had I not been there, or had they faked something? Either way, it didn't go through, thank God. But they tried. They tried. I sat in stunned silence. It wasn't just about words shouted at a party. It wasn't just a personal falling out. They had been planning to push me out. Slowly, quietly, first emotionally, then legally. This wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. I returned to the garage, every step heavy. My thoughts weren't just jumbled, they were volcanic. I pulled out my notebook again, this time not for budgeting, but for a war plan. I wrote in all caps across a fresh page. Property, custody, exit plan. I wasn't going to ask for permission anymore. I flipped to the back of the notebook and started listing what I had. Emails, property tax records, text screenshots, photos from the party. Then I listed what I needed. A real estate attorney, proof of residency, Jackson's birth certificate, something that proved my involvement in his upbringing. My heart was no longer broken. It was bracing. These people didn't trip and fall into cruelty. They built a staircase and pushed me down it, one step at a time. And now, I was done tumbling. They wanted to erase me. Let's see how they like it when I fight back legally. It was silent when I woke up. The light creeping in through the single garage window seemed colder than before. I sat up on the mattress, Gloria's old spare, and looked around at my scattered receipts, my hoodie on the floor, my laptop closed. The quiet weighed heavy, as though every sound I used to make inside that house had died. I thought, I'm still standing. That counts for something. I pulled the laptop close and opened it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I remembered the link I sent my attorney last night. Property, custody, exit plan. I sighed. Even saying it out loud to myself felt like breathing through glass. Then I closed the laptop and gathered the puzzle I made for Jackson. It slid out of my bag, its colors faded in the dim morning light. I traced his name, wood smooth under my fingers. I still remember carving each letter. I left the garage unit, the air crisp, the sun just waking the sky. It was later morning when I walked to the post office in town, just down Main Street. My sneakers made quiet steps on concrete. I pulled my coat tighter around me. Even though I work nights, mornings like this were the worst. The contrast between what I'd hoped and what I'd become. At the post office, I stood in line, clutching the handmade gift for Jackson. My turn came. The clerk smiled, handed me a small package, a personalized book I ordered weeks ago. It had his name, my name, just two people who love each other. I paid the fee, folded the receipt, left. Walking out, I looked at my phone. There, on Facebook, was a post. Celine had posted a picture of what looked like that same book, opened, someone's hands, her hands, holding it. Caption: a special book from mommy to my sweet boy. Over 700 likes already. Comments: so sweet. What a loving mom. My name wasn't mentioned. My chest tightened. My stomach roiled. I held my breath, felt small again, invisibly small. I walked home more slowly than coming, taking side streets so no one would see me. Later that night, I sat in the dim garage unit light, bank statements glowing on screen, receipts piled on the coffee table leg. I logged into the joint account Lyle and I once held. Thought it was dormant, forgotten. But numbers moved. Withdrawals I never made. 2,500 here, 1,000 there. Over 2 years, it added up. $38,200. Money I'd saved for something I believed in, something just for me, a small cleaning business, my own clients, not being someone's shadow. I slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed. My heart pounded. My hands shook. Betrayal wasn't loud tonight. It was the ache in my bones, the cold in my lungs. Then I remembered. I had paid off the second mortgage after Celine said she lost her purse. I paid for Jackson's first shoes, his first school fare. I framed every image where I held him, kissed his forehead, wiped his tears, and I believed Lyle when he told me, "You are the glue holding this family together." I believed it. I believed him so hard, But glue holds stains, too. It stays when everyone else walks away. It covers stains, but no one ever thanks the glue for doing the work. I moved to my notebooks. Screenshots of the bank, emails with Celine sending gift photos but deleting my name, old voice messages from Jackson calling me Mommy M. I copied, saved. I organized. My plan began to take shape. Evidence, witnesses, proof of payments, proof of presence. I called Rowena in my head. She rallied me. She'd see this, my past, every small humiliation, brought into sharp light. I prepared a folder. Evidence, book, bank, messages, ownership. I wrote each item down with bullet points. I felt strength returning to my bones. I remembered the moment I bought the house after Mom died, the pride I felt. The house had been Mom's and mine, never theirs. My name was on the deed where it belonged. The anger settled into determined focus. I thought, they think they can erase me. But I spread the roots deeper. Words, proof, truth. As midnight approached, I quieted the house around me. I packed the handmade puzzle back in its box. I looked at my reflection in the garage mirror, lines around my eyes, hands rough but steady. I whispered, if they want war, they picked the wrong woman. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It read, you think I stole from you? Watch your bank inbox. Something's coming. My heart raced, throat dry. Was this Celine? Or someone else? I didn't know. But I felt one thing with clarity. I wouldn't back down now. I left my garage apartment that morning, clutching the crumpled cease and desist letter in my jacket pocket. The air was crisp in San Antonio, sun just pushing gold through live oaks. I breathed deep, trying to calm the knot in my chest. The street was quiet, neighbors already off to work, children waiting for buses. I walked toward the corner cafe where I often got coffee before starting my day. My routine when everything felt like it was falling apart. Inside, the smell of fresh ground beans, sizzling milk foam, the clink of mugs. I ordered a latte and sat near the window, watching people pass by. I turned my phone over and over in my hand. Do not refer to yourself as Mom in any form. The words echoed. Celine had mailed that, certified. It sat on my kitchen table inside their shared house before I was locked out. And now it threatened everything. My latte arrived. Warm, familiar. I took a long sip, closed my eyes. I remembered Jackson calling me Mommy M for the first time, after his teacher asked who packed his lunch. I shyly smiled, half proud, half ashamed. No one in that house seemed to notice I existed outside chores. But he did. Maybe being seen by one little boy made all the difference. I pulled open my Messenger app. No new voicemails. Then I saw it. A saved voicemail from Jackson, from before the party. His voice was small, trembly, but so genuine. Happy Auntie Day. Love you, Mommy M. I played it 3 times, sometimes pausing in between, just to hear the sound of my heart being held by something real. I left the cafe, latte abandoned. Returning to the temp apartment, I sat at the tiny kitchen table. My laptop was open from the night before. I stared at that certified letter Celine had sent. Order to cease all unauthorized contact with Jackson. Do not use Mom in conversation or text. Signed by a lawyer. The legal gravity of it pressed on me like a weight in my gut. She was weaponizing motherhood. She was placing laws between me and a child who had never asked for distance. Did I overstep? I whispered to the empty room. Did all the times I sang him Twinkle, Twinkle, held him sick in my arms, teach him to tie his shoelace, did that overstep? Or was that the heart of motherhood, even if no one bought me gifts or thanked me? I recalled nights when Jackson couldn't sleep, and I drove from hospital shifts straight to his room, whispered ridiculous stories about moons and turtles just to coax a smile. I thought family meant more than paper, but Celine thought differently, or had convinced Lyle differently. It hurt that the person I trusted most might have helped build the walls between me and him. I opened my email and drafted a reply with Rowena. Not an angry tirade, but precise. This letter offers no reason, only a demand, I typed. You have chosen legal intimidation over love. I saved, not sent. I knew timing mattered. I consulted my little evidence folder, screenshots of messages, voice clips, photos. I noted which ones had dates, which had Celine's name, which could prove who I was in Jackson's life, not just someone who cleaned up after him. By midday, I had gathered all I could without raising suspicion. Then came a knock at the door. I froze. It was Lyle's voice. "Ayla, can we talk?" He stood outside. The sun had crept to high noon, his shadow stretched. I opened cautiously. "Why is this water bill under my name now?" I asked. "Why did they move your address from the title search to Celine's name?" My voice was level, but it carried all the nights I stayed up worrying. Did I lose my home by accident or by betrayal? He blinked. I didn't know. He didn't know. And that made me angrier than shouting ever could. I handed him the certified letter. "This isn't ignorance anymore," I said. "This is a demand to erase me." We stood in the doorway. Background noise, cars, distant music, children laughing down the street. And in that moment, he wasn't my brother's face. He was the silence that let this happen. Later, after Lyle left, I sat down at dusk, the sky turning copper. I retrieved photos of me holding Jackson when he was born, photos he didn't post. I placed them on the kitchen counter. I lighted a candle. I whispered, "If they want this to be legal, I'll make it legal." Then I printed a photo of him laughing, dirt on his cheeks from playing outside, leaning on me. My name under that image, clear. On my legal folder, I pinned it using a paperclip I'd snapped from a binder. "You don't erase a mother's heart with paper." I made sure that caption was visible. Midnight found me at my desk with Rowena's contact open. I typed out requests for parental alienation expert opinions. I bookmarked cases where courts had ruled against emotional abuse, against cutting off grandparents. But this was me, not grandmother, but aunt who loves like mother. I copied everything. Emails, old voicemails, thank you cards, photos. My hands tired, but stayed steady. When I closed the laptop, I saw myself in the mirror over the sink. Tired eyes, set jaw. I told myself, I will not back away. Not this time. I opened the front door of the church's reception hall, hesitant. The soft light under the colonnade felt almost kind. As I stepped in, folding chairs behind me, I carried a tray of empty coffee cups and used napkins. I tried to appear invisible. After all, I'd already seen what Celine could do in plain view. She had scissored open trust like fabric. But that morning, I reminded myself, visibility was part of the battle. Around me, church members greeted each other with gentle smiles. As I passed the floral wreath by the entrance, I smelled lilies and old wood, the kind of smell that reminds you of funerals and forgiveness but also secrets. I placed the tray down behind a table, careful not to jostle anything. A woman asked if I would help with chairs. I nodded. Mid-morning sun slanted through arched windows. The room buzzed quietly, people discussing the friend we'd lost, memories offered like ribbons in a funeral song. I folded chairs with steady hands. My knees ached from bending down. My heart ached from every whisper reminding me I was just help. A stranger leaned in, mischief or ignorance in her voice. "Thank you for helping today. You always pitch in." I nodded. Then remarked in passing to Celine within earshot, "I grew up here, you know. I know what needs to be done." Celine turned, lips tight, looked at me like I was dust under her shoe. She raised her voice just enough so people nearby heard, "Oh, she just helps out sometimes. She's not family." The room froze. A wave of discomfort. Gasps I thought I heard. Lyle looked up, but his eyes diverged immediately. No one stood up. No one asked Celine to stop. My name wasn't mentioned. It was as though I had just been erased again. I moved to the corner, palms sweaty around a chair leg. My mind flashed back. All those years carrying laundry baskets, cleaning spilled juice, picking up broken toys, cooking dinners for others while my own plans collected dust. I rubbed my arms, my skin tight with shame and rage. After the reception, I lingered outside, under the oak tree by the parking lot, waiting for Celine. When she came, flanked by a cousin and her phone in hand, I faced her. My voice calm, no tremble. "Say it to my face." Celine hesitated. Her cousin nudged her. Celine narrowed her eyes. "What? Did you want me to call you family now?" she said, her tone sharp. "That you're not a mother? Not a sister? Not anything but a burden we carried?" Her words stung, but I didn't yell. I inhaled, ground my jaw. "Push me again," I said, and I pushed back louder. She laughed, a dismissive sound. She walked off. I went home slowly, sunlight soft on my shoulders, shadow long. The world felt both heavy and electric. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table, garage apartment again. The lamp was low. I opened my shared cloud account with Jackson, a space I helped build for memories, for laughter recorded late at night, for "I love you" when he couldn't sleep. It meant everything. But tonight the silence was loud, voice notes missing, bedtime stories gone, photos deleted, filters changed so that what used to be family photos anyone can see now said admin only. My breath caught. I stared at the screen. My grandmother used to say, "He who steals something small can steal something large." I realized then, what Celine was stealing wasn't just memories, it was presence. I discovered that I had saved voice notes from when Jackson fell off his tricycle, when he told me about his first friend, when he whispered, "Mommy, M." Each one treasured. They were gone now, replaced by blank spaces, by messages of restriction, by something legal and precise, removal, invisible cuts. My mind sharpened. I pulled out my phone, called my lawyer Rowena. I didn't beg, I didn't ask. I demanded documentation, specific rights, proof of what had been deleted. I asked for legal recourse. "You cannot delete blood," I said into the phone, because she needed to know I wasn't shrinking away any longer. Later, I printed messages from years before, texts where Celine said things behind closed doors, but in writing nonetheless, where she claimed credit for things I did, called me just the cleaner, just the help, not enough. I framed them in my mind as pieces of proof, not vengeance, but truth. I made copies. I scanned bills where I paid for household repairs, emergencies, school supplies. I saved every receipt, because like a painter saving scraps, I was saving the truth. Under the moonlight, I stood by the kitchen window. I stared across the street at Celine's house, our house, legally mine. The window's dark, but I knew someone was inside. I sipped lukewarm tea, letting the bitterness settle, but also energize. I typed out a letter to Celine via Rowena. Restore contact with Jackson, restore deleted messages, audit house property, proof of ownership, demand respect. I signed it in my name, Ayla Crane. Then my phone buzzed, a blocked number. My heart skipped. I answered softly. A child's voice came through, shaky, sweet. "I miss you, Mommy. M." Then silence. The blocked number message echoed in my mind as I closed the garage door behind me. I hung my coat, dropped the mail unopened on the kitchen counter, and paused. My phone vibrated again. Celine's social media alert. Another post. A family photo from Thanksgiving dinner, everyone clustered tight around Celine and Jackson. I was seated at the far edge, my chair pushed back, half-cropped from all posts. Caption: "Grateful for my beautiful family." Comments floated in. "Where's Ayla?" someone asked. But replies vanished, deleted. I slipped out the front door, aiming for the relative's house where dinner was already underway. The air was colder now, leaves damp beneath shoes. It was 2 weeks after Celine's cease and desist. My lawyer Rowena's voice echoed. "We move forward. Identity fraud, asset fraud, digital proof attached." She'd promised me strength. Tonight, I needed to carry that strength into a room full of judgment and ghosts. At the entrance hall, I shrugged off my scarf, clutching a small notebook. I had notes inside those pages, screenshots of recent posts, documents, bank alerts, things that stung, but also things that could cut if laid out carefully. I made my way to the dining room, breathing through that tightness in my throat. People smiled as I passed. Some were kind, others didn't make eye contact. I set my dish of green beans on a buffet table, rubbing my palms together, even though the warmth from the oven behind me was strong. We gathered around the table, relatives, close and distant. The candles flickered, the turkey and stuffing glowed under soft lights. I sat at the end. Kids laughed, jokes tossed across platters. Celine looked radiant, proud. Jackson perched on her lap. Laughter seemed to bounce off the walls. But I felt removed, not just by seating. A cousin leaned toward me, wiping mashed potatoes. "Ayla, can you pass the gravy?" she asked, voice polite but distant. I did. As I slid the boat across, I caught Celine's gaze. Oh, that cold flicker. Then she turned and laughed, something about a joke only she and a group of aunties shared. I felt the weight of those laughs. I tasted bitterness. After dinner, someone suggested a photo. Celine stood, arm around Jackson. Everyone crowded in. I stepped forward. She barely acknowledged me. I posed at her side as cameras raised. I smiled, but inside I felt invisible. Someone's phone flashed. I saw the grainy photo later, my head trimmed at the edge, someone's hand blocking part of my face. The post read exactly the same. My beautiful family. Mine was still there, untagged. Later that night, in the small quiet of my temp apartment, I checked my bank account again. A notification popped up. Loan application denied. I frowned. I never applied. I swiped to my credit report. There it was, a fraudulent application using my social security number. $15,000 for a home improvement. The address. The house I once lived in. The one I own. The photos Celine posted months ago showed new tiles, new lights, new windows. I matched dates, IP addresses. The device logged in matched the network from the house. My name, used without my knowing. My heart turned stiff. Betrayal turned razor sharp. I taped 2 prints on the wall, screenshots of the credit bureau, of the bank alert, and pictures of the house renovations. I traced lines connecting names, dates, deeds, evidence clawed up from shadows. I typed an email to Rowena. Identity fraud, asset fraud. I want documentation. All of it. Her reply came swiftly. Now they've made it criminal. Game on. I didn't cry. Not tonight. I set up a private video diary on my phone. Password protected. If one day Jackson ever wonders who I was, I said into the lens, voice strong though my hands shook. I held up photos. Him asleep, him smiling after I cooked him breakfast, me singing lullabies in the dark. This is me, not invisible. Days later, Thanksgiving morning, I woke earlier than usual. Sunlight filtered through dusty blinds. I put on a simple dress, one Celine once said wasn't nice enough, and practiced walking with my shoulders back. The house of relatives was warm. I smelled cinnamon rolls, turkey roasting. I stepped through front gate, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers I'd picked at sunrise. I handed them to the hostess. She smiled. I walked to my place at the table. They waited for the blessing. I closed my eyes, folded hands. I heard Celine whisper to someone, "Ayla always tries so hard," as though it were a compliment. And yet the words felt sharp. I stood, voices rising after grace. Plated food passed, laughter and stories. But my mind stayed focused on the fraudulent loan, the posts, the messages, the stolen respect. After dessert, someone asked for a toast. Celine stood up. She lifted her glass. "To family," she said. "To memories." Everyone raised their glasses. I felt the tension coiled. When she sat, I stood, glass in hand. Silence fell. People turned. I took a breath. "To truth," I said. "And to people who believe that love means more than words in posts." The room stiffened. Celine looked away. Jackson's eyes flicked toward me. Someone in the back murmured. I sat down, heart pounding. My throat tasted of wine. I didn't finish my plate. I left. Outside, cold air bit my cheeks. I walked down the drive, steps echoing. I pulled out my phone. Email from Rowena. "Your subpoena has been approved." I looked up at a sky streaked with pale stars. The wind rustled leaves. I whispered, "Let's see her lie under oath." The judge's gavel wasn't what made my throat raw that afternoon. It was silence. Heavy, twisting silence. I stood outside my car, staring across the manicured lawn of a mansion-style house with towering white columns and hedges so perfect they could have been painted on. Balloons floated lazily in the air, tied to iron railings and plastic chairs. Celine's birthday party for Jackson, opulent, performative, drowning in sugar and spectacle. 2 weeks had passed since the subpoena was approved, and here she was, pretending as if the storm hadn't arrived. Inside me, something growled, a low, quiet thing. Not rage, not vengeance, purpose. Because justice wasn't just coming, it had already put on its shoes. I adjusted my navy blazer, brushing invisible lint from my sleeves. The weight of my file case grounded me, heavy and full of truth. Rowena, calm as ever, stood beside me in black flats, her expression unreadable, but her presence like armor. She leaned toward me slightly. "Stay steady," she whispered. I nodded, stepping forward. Celine stood in the middle of her curated chaos, champagne glass raised. She wore a sleeveless cream dress and carried herself like royalty, her lips painted crimson, her smile camera-ready. "To Jackson," she declared, and guests clapped politely. Children darted across the lawn, frosting on their cheeks. Music played through hired speakers, and then, like a chord snapping in a symphony, silence fell. A woman in a sharp dark suit emerged from the crowd. Her walk was purposeful, heels clicking like punctuation marks. She approached Celine with a clipboard and said loudly, firmly, "Celine Maddox, you've been served." Gasps followed. Celine froze. She blinked as if the sentence had been spoken in a foreign language. Then she reached for the clipboard, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the document. "What is this?" she asked, voice trembling just enough to betray her. Photographers clicked, partygoers whispered. Someone dropped a paper plate. Another child started crying. The illusion broke, not with a crash, but a subtle unraveling. The party still glittered, but the core had cracked. We didn't stay. Rowena and I walked away slowly, heads held high. No smirk, no gloating, just the dignity of someone who knew her truth was finally being heard. "This is where it really begins," Rowena said as we reached the parking lot. "The truth, under oath." The following morning, I returned to the courthouse. Everything about it was stark. Marble floors smelling faintly of polish and lemon oil, security lines coiled around stanchions, echoes of shuffling papers and murmured instructions. I surrendered my purse at the checkpoint, keeping only the file case pressed against my thigh. I spotted Celine down the hall, sunglasses covering her eyes, lipstick flawless, but her posture brittle. Her lawyer flanked her, face tight. Rowena led me into a side room. It smelled of dust and old coffee. I sat on the worn vinyl bench, knees bouncing until I stopped them with my palms. I remembered Celine's old words, ones she'd spoken freely when she thought I couldn't hear. "Bleach girl. You smell like pine sol. You'll never be anything more than a mop with legs." The words had once reduced me, now they fueled me. In court, Rowena started. She produced printed texts, projected onto a screen. "She's too dumb to sue. She scrubs toilets for a living." A few gasps. One reporter near the glass windows scribbled fast. The judge, a middle-aged woman with steely eyes, tapped her gavel. "Order." And then, it was my turn. I took the stand. The seat was hard, the mic too close. I adjusted it. My voice, when it came, was soft but sure. I spoke of work, real work. The kind that leaves calluses, the kind that no one claps for. I told them about my mornings cleaning surgical suites, my evenings fixing leaks in a home that technically didn't bear my name. I told them about Jackson's ear infections, the lullabies, the hand-drawn flashcards taped to the fridge. I showed pictures. Me, with Jackson sleeping on my chest. Me, teaching him to tie his shoes. Me, covered in paint after redoing his room. "I'm not a mother by biology," I said. "But I showed up every day. I gave every part of myself. That's motherhood." Then I handed Rowena my final folder. She took it to the judge, screenshots of deleted messages, photo metadata, a journal I'd kept quietly for 3 years. Even Celine's own words, recordings, emails, dismissals, she thought vanished. The courtroom was still. Then the judge leaned forward, voice low but resonant. This case is not only about property or guardianship, it's about the dismissal of a human being's role in a child's life. And the pattern of cruelty shown here today. She trailed off, visibly weighing the words. The court acknowledges the plaintiff's role as a maternal figure, regardless of bloodline. She declared temporary supervised visitation for Jackson, and more, fraud investigation into the deed transfer, a court order mandating Celine vacate the house, a freeze on asset movement until further review. My name re-entered into the official record. I didn't cry until I got outside. Not loud sobs, just a release. As I stood under a tree near the courthouse, wind catching the hem of my skirt, I pulled out the photo from my pocket. Jackson and me, smiling, his arms around my neck. The one Celine had torn in half. I'd taped it back together. Reporters waited nearby. One asked if I had a statement. I turned toward them, smiled slightly, and said, "Sometimes the people who clean the mess are the ones who've been holding it all together." And I walked away. Not because I was done fighting, but because, finally, I no longer had to fight for the right to be seen. The courtroom held a heavy kind of silence, the kind that thickens the air before justice arrives. It smelled of polished oak, filtered light, and the sterile chill of institutional power. As I stepped through the tall double doors, my cane-heeled shoes clicked softly on the marble floor, echoing against the hush. My binder pressed tight beneath my arm. I exhaled slowly. The weight I'd carried for so long, shame, suspicion, fear, finally began to lift, shifting into something steadier. Purpose. Rowena walked beside me, her briefcase heavy with evidence, her steps sure and composed. Outside the tall windows, late morning sun sliced through dust motes like stained glass. Inside, tension coiled. Attorneys whispered, court reporters tested wires, and people waited for spectacle, for truth, maybe even for closure. This was the moment all the small wounds had led to. The missing receipts, the deleted texts, the voice notes recorded in secret. They'd all brought us here. Across the courtroom, Celine sat perched like she belonged there. Hair sleek, lips painted the color of defiance, her outfit designer and deliberately sharp. Her attorney leaned close and whispered something urgent. She didn't respond right away. Instead, her eyes locked on mine. I didn't flinch. I met her stare not with malice, but with expectation. It was time. I opened my binder slowly. Inside were carefully tabbed pages, bank statements, falsified deeds, notarized letters, screenshots, voice recordings, proof, in layers and ink and data. I laid them on the table one by one. The judge entered, and the room stirred to life. Court is now in session. Rowena rose first. She handed the USB to the court clerk. With a calm efficiency that I envied, the clerk connected it to the system. A screen flickered to life. Celine's voice filled the courtroom, clear and unmistakable. "She's dumb. She'll sign anything. I'll own this house before she even realizes it." Then came Lyle's voice. "We can't just take it from her. It's wrong." Celine again. "She's not family. She's our free maid." The silence that followed was total. I heard the collective inhale, the gallery stunned, the reporters frozen, even the tapping of pens ceased. Celine paled, her mouth tightened into a line, her lawyer stiffened. Then came the surprise. A notary public took the stand, a woman with calm, steady eyes and a folder under her arm. "Your Honor," she said, "I was contacted to notarize a document concerning Miss Pige Crane's property. I declined. I filed an official refusal. My records show no legal contact was completed." She placed her logs on the evidence table. "This document," she said, lifting the fraudulent title transfer, "is forged." The judge leaned in. Rowena provided corroborating evidence, IP addresses, metadata, chain of custody documentation, time-stamped emails, my social security number attached to unauthorized applications. Celine's composure unraveled by degrees. Then it was my turn. I rose from my seat and walked slowly to the witness stand. "My name is Ayla Crane," I said. "I was called the maid." I was told I wasn't family. But I was the one who scrubbed floors at midnight, who repaired pipes in winter, who held Jackson when he had a fever and no one else would stay. I have been dismissed, erased, but I never disappeared. I showed photos, me cradling Jackson, me repairing a leaky roof, me painting over water damage, voice notes of lullabies sung softly in the dark, emails where I asked for acknowledgement, documents where I begged for clarity. They erased my name from the deed, but not from his memories, not from what I gave. I walked back to my seat. The judge reviewed everything. I sat rigid, barely breathing. And then the verdict. Celine would be removed from the property within 30 days. Criminal fraud proceedings would move forward. The house title would be returned to my name. Limited but renewed visitation with Jackson was reinstated. The judge added, "What was taken was not just property, but dignity. Ms. Crane, you've reclaimed both, with restraint, with clarity, and with honor." Tears filled my eyes, not from sorrow, but from the release of a truth finally seen, finally acknowledged. I stepped past the media, past the flashing bulbs and scribbling pens. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a headline. I had already won. I walked out into the sun, holding a photo in my pocket. Me and Jackson, stitched back together, taped from an old tear. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And it was mine. And this time, I was not invisible. I woke up to pale sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains of my modest new home, a quiet two-bedroom rental nestled in a sleepy Texas suburb. The house was smaller than the last one, but the peace it held was unmatched. For the first time in years, I felt safe. No more surveillance cameras tracking my every move. No tension each time I passed the mailbox, wondering what would arrive next. No waiting for the floor to creak with someone else's anger. Just light, air, and the sound of birds perched in trees outside. In the kitchen, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, my eyes landed on a weathered yellow envelope labeled Old Papers. My breath hitched. I reached for it slowly, my fingers brushing against the rough paper. On the front was handwriting I knew like my own heartbeat, Jackson's. It was dated 2 years earlier. To Mommy M, I love you even if they say I shouldn't. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was another note. I know you packed my lunches. I saw you cry when I was sick. The paper was soft at the corners, folded and unfolded so many times that its edges had given up. Tears welled up in my eyes and spilled freely, but they weren't tears of grief, not anymore. They came from a place deeper, from being seen, truly seen, even in hiding. I sank onto the couch, the envelope in my lap, holding it like it was treasure. In that moment, it was. Those words were more powerful than any courtroom ruling. They were the proof I had longed for, that every quiet act of love, every peanut butter sandwich, every forehead kiss, every whispered "I love you" in the dark, had made it through. He noticed. He knew. Later that morning, after the tears dried, I opened my laptop. Among emails about moving services and startup checklists was one from Rowena. Update on Celine's case. The subject line alone made my chest tighten. I clicked. The fraud charges weren't just staying in civil court, they were escalating to criminal. Evidence was mounting. More people were speaking up. Then came another headline in the body of the email. Lyle had filed for separation. Not reconciliation, not another apology over wine, but legal, filed paperwork with the county clerk. It wasn't closure exactly, but it was confirmation. Consequences were real. For once, the truth was louder than the performance. That afternoon, I video called Jackson. He looked older, taller. There was a sparkle in his eye I hadn't seen in so long. His hair was messy, cheeks pink from running outside. "Hi, Mommy M," he beamed. "You still make the best pancakes?" My heart clenched and lifted at once. I flipped the camera, showing my small kitchen. It didn't have marble counters or chrome appliances, just clean white cabinets and sunlight on the floor. "They're not perfect," I smiled. "But I'm learning." He giggled. That sound, pure, unfiltered joy, poured into my heart like a balm. We talked until my phone battery gave out, but even then, the silence that followed was gentle. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like peace. A week later, I signed the papers. Not divorce papers, business ones. My dream had a name now: Light Hands Cleaning. I wasn't scrubbing floors just to survive anymore. I was CEO. I bought supplies, got licensed, hired 2 employees. My first client was a domestic violence shelter. Women who, like me, had once been shadows in their own homes. I trained them how to clean professionally, how to write an invoice, how to track hours, how to speak with confidence. I taught them the most important thing of all: visibility is never something someone hands you. You build it, you fight for it, you claim it. At night, I joined a therapy circle. We didn't sit on soft couches or sip tea. We sat in cold folding chairs, some of us still wearing uniforms from work, but we shared our stories like offerings. I raised my hand one night. "I still miss being part of a family," I admitted. My voice shook, not from fear, but from the weight of that truth. A woman across from me, gray streaks in her braids and pain behind her eyes, looked at me and said, You're building one. In a better way." I looked around. Faces nodded, people who knew what it was to be erased, who knew what it was to scream into a void and have silence answer. Here, I wasn't erased. Here, I was heard. One evening, I hung a photo on the wall. It was old, slightly torn at the edges, a picture of me and Jackson. We were covered in mud, grinning with wild joy, grass stains on his shorts and dirt on my face. I had taped it back together months ago, the way I was learning to piece myself back together. I framed it and placed it where the light hit it each morning, every crack visible. Nothing hidden. That night, I recorded a video diary. My room was quiet, lit only by the lamp beside my bed. I stared into the lens, steady. "If you've been erased," I said, voice low but sure, "remember, dust doesn't mean defeat." I took a breath. You weren't born to be background. You were meant to shine. I ended the recording and let the silence stretch, not heavy, not hollow, just real. I closed my eyes and rested my head back. I was tired, yes, but I wasn't broken. I was mending. My scars wouldn't disappear. They were mine. They told my story, but now they weren't the whole story. They were just the first chapter. My name is Ayla Crane. I was the maid. I became the storm. Even after the courtroom settled and the dust cleared, one truth stood tall. Silence doesn't mean surrender. When someone tries to erase your worth, your past, or your role in a family, the most powerful response isn't rage, but resilience. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by the people you trusted most? What did you do about it? If this story hit close to home, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. There are more stories coming. Raw, real, and full of the justice that life sometimes delays, but never denies.